Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Molly. I'm a knitter based out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and on this channel, Lefty Knits, I talk about all things knitting and any other crafty thing that strikes my fancy that particular week. If you've been here a while, you might notice that I'm filming from a slightly different location today. I'm sitting on my bed right now. Basically, our bedroom is like a bed with a wall of closets and a wall of things, including a small desk and a chair where I usually sit when I'm making my videos. But today I decided I would try sitting on the bed. The window's right in front of me. So we'll see how this goes. I think the lighting is a bit more natural, and especially now that the weather is changing, it's very dark outside, it's raining a lot, it gets dark so early. I thought this might be a good thing to try just to make the lighting a little bit better on its own. Anyway, my plan was to make a podcast episode today. That was my plan last week as well, but my knitting mojo hasn't like quite been there. I don't really know what it is. I'm working on a sock for my boyfriend's mom. That's my primary project, and I'm getting there with the first sock. It's getting pretty close, but I think it's just like, it's not that I'm not happy to make it, it just feels like it's been like such a slog. It's also partially that I'm very overwhelmed by the Christmas gifts I've kind of told myself I'm going to try to knit. I want to knit a baby sweater in bulky yarn, but still, or a toddler sweater, I guess. I think I might want to knit an adult hat and DK weight yarn. So I don't think anything will feel quite the same as these socks, just because they are growing very slowly, given that they're in fingering weight yarn. But it's still kind of the same, just it's slightly longer. Last week I did a knit and chat while I worked on them and talked about knitting tools, which I'll link, and I also did a video where I talked about my winter plans and how my fall makes went, which I'll link as well. So today I figured I'd maybe do something a little bit different, perhaps inspired a bit by everyone's vlogmases, and also inspired by the state of my knitting collection, my life, how things are going. I don't know. Today I plan to film a little bit of a knitting chores vlog, I suppose. I have quite a few things that have kind of been looming over me, projects that I need to fully finish, things I need to get off my plate. So I figured I would do a quick little chat about some of those things, and then I would just kind of take you along as I do those things for the rest of the afternoon. First up is just something I have to block. This is probably the easiest thing. My blocking mats are clear now, and I have my Be Thankful cardigan by Lily Kate France. I've shown quite a few times that needs a blocking. Getting that on the blocking mat is probably priority number one, because I leave for Christmas in a couple weeks, and I'll be there through the new year in Alabama, where I'm traveling, and I just kind of like to do a lot of these little tasks that have just been sitting and waiting for me before I leave, so that I can start 2024 with a clean slate, at least in terms of some of these like little things I've been kind of putting off, I guess. So blocking this before I go, and probably just today, would be a good first start. Next, I have some ends to weave in, like a lot of ends. So this is also a Lily Kate France pattern. This is the My Time sweater. I finished it forever ago. I was talking about this before my hiatus last spring. I needed to redo the sleeves. So I knitted, the sleeves were so long, I knit it to pattern. Like, I think they covered my entire hand without like any sort of stretching. They were kind of okay before I blocked, but after I blocked, it was like it was a no-go. So given that these sleeves have this dramatic drop stitch effect, I had to frog the sleeves and start over. So I redid both the sleeves. I blocked the sleeves only, I think. And it's been done for a while, but just sitting around. So it has like a million ends. I don't think I'd weaved in, yeah, there's ends everywhere. So just weaving in the ends of this is gonna be the other thing that I want done, so I can just fold it, put it with my other knitwear, and like call it a day. And so that I can wear it, because I think it's very nice. I just haven't gotten around to doing the finishing touches on it because I felt kind of burnt out on it since it was like a 10-month project, I guess. After that, I have some frogging to do. The next thing I have to do is a little bit of a bummer, but this is my boyfriend's muscle burrow, and I have to frog the stockinette half of it. I've talked a lot about this. It is a muscle burrow by Isolde Teague. It's for my boyfriend. It's made out of Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock Light in the colorway Wild Thyme. And my plan was to knit it in half twisted rib and then half stockinette. But there's a problem that happened because the gauge of the stockinette and just the properties of stockinette stitch in general, I would say, are different from the twisted rib. So this, where the hat switches from stockinette to twisted rib, it kind of like balloons out a little. And when it's folded in itself, it creates a little bit of a lip when it's like worn, that like kind of swoops out from the hat. I don't know how easy that is to see. It's probably easier on a head, but I don't want to put it on with my hair. But like it kind of has like a bell shape as opposed to going straight down. I think you can kind of see that. I think my boyfriend would probably just wear this if I asked him to, or keep it. I don't know if he would wear it, and that's the thing. I want him to like it. I want it to be good for him, so I'm gonna frog the stockinette portion and reknit it in twisted rib. I might just try to pick up the stitches with this needle. This is the needle I used, a US 1.5. I might just try to pick up the stitches around the transition, and then undo it and frog it. I might just frog it and go rogue, and then once I'm into the twisted rib, pick it up. And I can like pretty easily, even if I have stitches that have laddered down a little, I can like pick them up and rework them properly. So that might be the way that I go. But either way, I'm just gonna frog this half of the stockinette hat and get started on finishing this in the way that my boyfriend wants it to be done, which in this case, I'll just do a whole twisted rib hat. I have two other projects to completely frog. I'm gonna sneeze. I'll start with my Gib pullover. This is the Gib by Andrea Mowry. This is, I think, the Gib 1, or the one for feminine frames. I made this in Jagger Spun. I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to pronounce it. Zephyr, I believe, is the yarn, the worsted weight version, which is the 50% wool, 50% silk blend. And that was the wrong kind of yarn for this project. It fit really well before I blocked it, but because of the silk content and the really high silk content, it's a lot like looser and more drapey than I think I would prefer for this stitch pattern. And like the cable detail, the sleeves are just like really long, the armholes are really big, it drags a little bit, it just doesn't look good. I really like this pattern. I'd like to reknit it. I'd also like to use this yarn for something else. Guess I'll probably start with the sleeves, frog the sleeves, then frog the body, and put this yarn back into my stash. I don't know exactly what this yarn's going to be yet, but maybe a shawl. I might make a few things out of it, like a smaller shawl or scarf, and then a tee of some kind, or something that feels like a little bit more appropriate as like a drapier piece. And then last, I have this to frog. Now this is a design of my own that I was working on, actually. There's a few things going on here. The primary thing here is that this yarn was discontinued. This is something I was working on, I might actually return to, and it's knit in Knit Picks Kindred, which is now pretty long discontinued. I think I knit this, or I was working on this at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. I thought about just making a sample out of this and trying to like tweak the pattern, make another sample in a yarn that isn't discontinued, and like work on the pattern, but that kind of fell to the wayside. And I think I'd still kind of like to potentially make a pattern like this, but it's not going to be in this yarn. It's not going to be this. So this is going to be frogged. The other thing is, this was like the third time I knit this. I think the first time the armholes were really big. The second time I added a stitch and I had to drop it, and then there was like a line of like stitches. So I kind of tried to tighten it up, but it didn't look that good. The third time, this time, I dropped a stitch. So here where it's really tight is where I tried to pick up the stitch and just add it, and it doesn't look that good. I mean, this doesn't look that neat anyway, but that really didn't look good, and it didn't help. So this also has to be frogged. My plan for this yarn actually is to make a Moonset pullover by Ozetta. It's super soft. This is an alpaca cotton blend yarn, and someone might have made that pattern with this yarn. I don't really know. That's my plan though. I think it'll work pretty well for this yarn. If I'm starting it and it doesn't seem like it'll work, that's fine. I'll just do something else. But that is my fifth thing that I want to do today. So with that, let's go ahead and get going on some of those tasks. First, I soaked my cardigan in some soapy water while I got to work on my other tasks. Next, I got to work sewing in the ends of the My Time sweater, which took a lot longer than I was expecting, but the good news was my boyfriend had finally watched the latest episode of Survivor. This was Thursday afternoon when I was filming, and I got to have a good animated discussion with him about it. I've cut out the audio, but if you are a Survivor fan, please hit me up. We should chat. I always want to talk more about Survivor. That and knitting are my two obsessions. After quite a while, I finally finished sewing in all the ends. I had to check it over a couple times because it turns out I had missed some, but then it was finally done, and my Time sweater is officially ready to wear. Once I had finished sewing in the ends, I think that probably took half an hour, I set up my blocking mats, I pulled my sweater out of the water, I dried it off, and I laid it out flat to dry. So that is another task totally done. At this point, I went a little rogue on my list and I completed my last task, number 5. I frogged my own design. I think I forgot about my muscle burrow because it was buried under the 2 sweaters when I took them out to the couch. I also think I chose this one first because I figured it would be faster without having sleeves, which maybe it was, but it turns out I had done a tubular bind off, so I actually had to go in and unpick all of that. At this point, I still had some stamina, so I didn't cut. Once I was done unpicking that bind off though, it was pretty smooth sailing and I had it all finished in, I won't say record time, but eventually. At this point I was on a sweater frogging kick, so I did the gib next. It was a lot easier to undo the bind offs. I just had to undo a little knot at the end and then I could frog normally because I had just bound off in pattern. I did have some issues because I had sewn in like where the sleeves met the body, which wasn't actually too bad. I was able to unpick it relatively easily, all things considered. I only filmed myself doing the sleeves. At that point, I got up to cook dinner and I rested for a little bit, and I ended up returning to and frogging the rest of the sweater pretty late that night. I was a little burnt out at this point, but I really wanted it done, so I decided to extend my efforts into the next day, and I worked on the muscle burrow finally. At this point, I did a little bit of snipping. I didn't pick up the stitches at the point where the ribbing changed to stockinette like I thought I might. I just
frogged, and then I knit the last row once I picked up all the stitches with my needle to make sure they were mounted correctly so future Molly could just jump right into this project once she was ready.
Alright, I'm back. I finished everything. It's the next day. You can tell because my hair is clean, even though I'm wearing the same sweatshirt. I did everything that I said I was gonna do. It took a little longer than I thought it would, and I did things wildly out of order. I guess, I don't know if I really intended, besides the blocking, to like put anything into a very particular order, but I think when I like numbered them and thought about them, and like when I talked about them yesterday, I kind of roughly figured that I would do them in order, but then I forgot basically every order that I said I was gonna do. So I finished the blocking first, which was great. I mean, it's still blocking, it's still like laying out and stuff, but it's all we need to do now is wait. I also finished sewing in the ends on my Be Thankful cardigan. This is all ready to be worn in public. It took me over half an hour to do this, which I really just wasn't expecting. I didn't think it would take that long, but sewing in ends I think always takes longer than I expect, especially for something like a sweater. I've been doing more like splicing of the yarns now. I think a lot of the yarns I've been using recently have been non-superwash, so I've been able to like get them to stick to each other using like water and friction. So I do that a lot. This also came in 50-gram balls for the main yarn, which was Scopius terrazzo. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I just know it's not sheepjis. Anyway, and then the mohair came in 25-gram balls, as mohair usually does. That mohair was, I think, Valley Yarn Southampton. So it just was like, you know, it was a lot of ends. I'm glad that I finally bit the bullet and just made myself do it. The next thing I said I was gonna do was this hat, frogging half of my Musselburgh, or my boyfriend's Musselburgh. And I did do that. I did it today. It was the last thing I did. I think I thought a lot more about the other things I was gonna do because those had been on my list of things to do for much longer than this. This is a newer development. I just finished this hat. It just finished blocking. My boyfriend and I just talked about ways that he would prefer it fit him. So I just think that when I think of things that are like on my long-term list, this wasn't it. I mean, it hasn't been, but I did finish this. I'm ready to go when it's time to pick this up again, which I think it'll be a couple weeks. So I said I was going to frog 2 sweaters, or well, one of them didn't have sleeves. One of them was my own design in Picks Kindred, which is this alpaca cotton blend, and here is the yarn returned to its raw form. It's a little bit scraggly, but I think it'll block out fine when I knit it. If I get really worried about it, I can like hank it up, I guess, or just loop it out and tie it and then soak it, but I'm probably not going to be bothered to do that. I did a tubular bind off, which I didn't think that I had done. So unpicking that was easily the vast majority of the time I spent doing this. But this yarn is ready to be used in the Moonset pullover. And last is the Jagger Spun Zephyr yarn. Ooh, one of them just fell. From my Gib pullover by Andrea Mowry. Here it all is, frogged out. This one didn't take anywhere near as long, although I had sewn in some ends already, which was a little bit of work to kind of pick out. I didn't really want to cut them because I didn't want to like mess up the balls that I had. Like this one has some pretty big, this is like probably close to at least a whole 100 grams of the yarn itself. And luckily I think I sewed in some ends and then I like tried it on and I was like, actually, I don't really like the fit of this. So I stopped sewing in ends. So it wasn't all of the ends. I'm really proud of myself. I think I did a great job. These are things that I've been thinking about doing for a really long time. I think I've been planning to frog that sweater design of mine in the Knit Picks yarn for like, I don't know, a year? I might have talked about it in a previous video. I think I've talked about the design and wanting to frog it. I might have even talked about wanting to make the moonset pullover in it. All of this has been something that's been looming over my head recently or long term, and it's just really nice to have it done, to know that these things will all be ready for me to wear in the case of something like my time sweater, or to make the next steps on when I'm ready for them. So when my Be Thankful cardigan is dry, I can sew in the ends and sew on the buttons. When I'm ready to use the yarn that I frogged, I can do that. And when I'm ready to return to my boyfriend's hat and knit it in all over twisted rib, that's gonna be ready for me as well. I hope that this served as a little bit of inspiration for you. If there's been anything you've been putting off in your knitting basket, anything that's kind of fallen to the bottom that you just don't really want to think about. If you have anything that you've been putting off, anything that you need to do or have felt inspired to do because you watched this video, I'd love to chat about it down below. I hope I'm not the only one who just leaves things that I know I want to frog sitting around for months at a time. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and please consider subscribing. I make videos about knitting at least once a week. Have a great rest of your day. Happy holidays, happy December, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.